Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another episode of the Sanity Project podcast. The Sanity Project podcast and anything I do and all of the guests I bring to the show help you awaken your mind to clarity and success in these trying times. Our guest today is Barbara Rubel. Barbara Rubel is a nationally recognized speaker on issues related to compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma. The third edition of her book, But I Didn't Say Goodbye, Helping Families After a Suicide, just launched. Barbara's story was featured in the Emmy Award-winning documentary Fatal Mistakes, narrated by Mariette Hartley. As a hospice bereavement counselor, she supported individuals who were terminally ill. Her patients taught her to never take life for granted. Barbara taught undergraduate and master's level courses at Brooklyn College, received a BS in psychology and master's in community health, and Barbara is a board-certified expert in traumatic stress, a diplomat with the American Academy of Experts in Traumatic Stress. Now, my listeners know that I never read the entire bio of the guests because I'd much rather have the guests speak, but Barbara's background is vital to life today. So Barbara's going to talk to us today about building personal resilience, but first she's going to tell us how she got here. Barbara, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited about being here.
I'm grateful that you are here because you talking about personal resilience is an important topic for me because I think that's what more people need. They avoid it. They don't even understand it. And coming from the place of suicide and trauma, I think you have a lot to talk about. So how did you get on this path to talk about helping families after a suicide?
Well, come back with me to 1986. I was in the hospital and my husband came into the room with a box of tissues. He handed me the box and I was pregnant, about to give birth, and didn't have a cold. So why is this man handing me a box of tissues? Mm-hmm. And I realized when he looked at the box of tissues, he said, "Your dad just killed himself."
Oh, Jesus.
And he was expecting me to become tearful or overwhelmed. He didn't know what to expect because I was about to give birth to not one baby, not two babies, but three babies. I was pregnant with triplets.
Oh.
Yes, and my dad shot himself right before the birth of his grandsons. He would have been a grandpa for the first time. He was so excited, but my dad had deteriorating discs in his back, and he could not live with the pain any longer. And that's what he wrote in his suicide note, that he was struggling with that pain. And he ended his life right before becoming a grandpa. And Joanne, it changed my entire life. Did other people feel what I felt? What is this? What is this thing called grief? What is bereavement? What is mourning? And it challenged me through the years to go back to school. I already had a Bachelor of Science degree in psychology, but I actually went back to school to get a master's in community health with a concentration in thanatology from Brooklyn College in New York because I wanted to learn whatever I could about traumatic loss. And I did learn. I learned so much, and what I learned is that we are all so unique in our loss, whether we are tearful or whether we are mindful or whether we grieve alone or whether we need groups. I facilitated a suicide loss survivor group for many years, but that's not for everyone. People grieve in their own way. What I realized is that I didn't say goodbye to my dad. And so that's why I wrote the book, But I Didn't Say Goodbye, Helping Families After a Suicide, because I realized that we are not alone. Whether you want to grieve by yourself, you're still part of a community, whether it's the workplace, your faith community, your family, your friends. There's someone there who you can reach out to. And I'm so fortunate for people like you who bring these podcasts to people who don't want to go out and share, that they could now sit back, have a cup of coffee, and listen to us talk about what it's like to build our resilience when our world is falling apart.
Absolutely. And I'm so grateful that you are here talking about this, because I think I came after you, didn't I? If I see something that I like, you know, I it's not a stalking thing. I just ask, but it's like, you know, this is the right person, because I might be in a place at that moment when I see your name, for example. But looking at, you know, when people don't say goodbye, specifically, they're left with some sort of guilt, which is really not effective for them, and they need help. And you're here to talk about resilience and tell people how you work the room in businesses.
Well, I'm a keynote speaker and trainer, so I could have a keynote address for, 500, 800 people, or a training for 30 people, because I'm also a consultant with the Department of Justice Office for Victims of Crime. So when I'm working a room, if I'm a presenter and I'm giving you my program, each and every person comes to that room with a different challenge. And I recognize you might be a victim service provider working with domestic violence or sexual assault, or I just did a presentation for the Department of Family and Protective Services in Texas for child fatality. So however you come to the room, whether it's suicide or anticipatory loss, you are facing challenge. So how do you build your resilience? And so I look at it where we have to look within, deep within our character traits, because our character trait, whatever that is a secret superpower. It is such a secret superpower, because if I asked those who are listening right now, what is your greatest strength? Most people will just stare into space. People cannot label their strengths. So that's my hope today, that they get out of this experience, is that they realize at least 8 character traits that they can use to face their challenges, to deal with and manage their losses. And that's the superpower. So we're going to list 8 characters of resilience and identify ways to put character strengths into practice in order to develop resilience. And whether it is a loss like suicide or homicide or car crash death, drug misuse death, or it's a non-death related loss. You might have a listener who's experiencing the fact that her company is downsizing and she's going to have to leave a job that she loves. Or perhaps a husband just lost his job and now he has to take his entire family and move out of state for another job. There are so many non-death related losses too. So I just want to keep in mind that this is about whatever challenge you are facing. So I created this fabulous principle. I love the acronym FABULOUS. And it's a framework for understanding that loss and burnout can be a catalyst for positive change and growth. It transforms the way you think about whatever challenge you're facing. You have a superpower, and it's deep within you, and it's called a character traits. So there's 8 keys to realizing your superpower. So if you're listening, grab a pen and write down these 8 words. FABULOUS. F, flexibility. That's about cognitive flexibility. A is about attitude and maintaining a positive attitude. B is about boundaries, keeping your limits. U is about understanding job satisfaction and why you love what you do. L is about laughter, joy, finding peace within your own spirit. O is about optimism. U is being united or connected with others, your faith community, your dog, your family, your friends. And S is about self-compassion. We're kind to other people. We also need to be kind to ourselves. So what I did, Joanne, is I looked for the past 5 years at all the most recent research on character strengths, positive psychology, building resilience, and I applied all of that research to this fabulous principle. So let's look at the first element. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into it. The first element of self-care, and it's the foundation of the fabulous principle, is the F, flexibility. That's your mindset, how you can create mental agility. It sets the stage for you to bounce back or recover from whatever challenges you're facing in your personal life or in the workplace. And you can become a flexible thinker if you understand that your thoughts can be logical or they can be exaggerated, but they can happen like that automatically. So your thought could increase negative feelings. So I like to give 3 tips. Repeat actions that worked in the past to manage your current reactions. So look at what did you think about situations in the past and use that to manage whatever you're going through now. Second, adjust your thinking to accept new knowledge. That means be open-minded. And third, brainstorm positive behaviors to individually deal with each problem so you don't become overwhelmed by all of the problems. So those are 3 tips. But we also have to recognize that we might have a blind spot. And these are unrecognized weaknesses, cognitive distortions. It's your spin on things that really don't make sense. Mm-hmm. It could be your strengths that you fail to see, or you fail to see yourself as others see you. So this element of self-care is about mental agility. So reframe your negative thoughts to positive ones, but also be alert to a critical thought when it enters your brain and change it immediately. Also, don't focus on one bad thing that happened instead of all the good things, and let go of your preconceived notions and biases that we take into the world with us. So this is what I would love your listeners to do. Right now, choose a strength. Think about how you put a strength into practice to be a flexible thinker. Here's one that comes up all the time in my trainings. They choose the strength open-minded. And how do they put it into practice? They'll say, I noticed a negative thought and I try to reframe it into a positive one. Or they choose the strength judgment or critical thinker. And they put it into practice by saying, I adjust my thinking while solving issues. Or the one that comes up the most, my strength to be a flexible thinker is being creative. And how do I put that into practice? I look at problems in clever ways. Your strength, Joanne, is your secret superpower. That's it. It's that simple. So let's dive into the A. That's the second element of self-care. And element 2 recognizes that a positive attitude is a tool for overcoming stressful demands of your job or your life. And your attitude is your perception. And your perception influences the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you behave. Your attitude guides your state of mind about everything. Mm-hmm. So attitude is reflected in behavior. So what can you do? Here's a tip. Use positive words to describe your experiences. Don't always go to the negative. And choose to have a positive attitude regardless of the negative things going on around you. You choose to have a positive attitude. So the positive approach in the present helps you achieve your desired future. You walk in that attitude. That's your set of beliefs about how you manage the situation. So you manage it positively. But attitude, you can have a negative attitude. Everybody knows someone who has a negative attitude. You can have a positive attitude. You can be neutral or mixed about something. But your attitude is an outlook based on your life circumstances and your learned behaviors. And I'm doing a lot of podcasts and webinars for women in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And this is what keeps coming up for their reasons for having a bad attitude at work. Management doesn't listen to their complaints. They're not appreciated. They feel overworked. The work pressure is causing them to be stressed out. And they bring personal problems to the workplace. Their kids are being bullied at school. Their mother is ill and they have to worry about health care for mom. Their husband needs a new car and they can't afford it. And how do you leave all that at home when you go to work? So that's an issue. So let's look at, like we did for the others, how do we choose a strength? And when we choose the strength, how do we practice it in order to have a positive attitude? Here's one that comes up often in my trainings. Careful. They choose the strength, being careful. And then they put it to practice. They'll say, I recognize a bias I'm feeling that's creating a negative attitude. Another one that comes up, especially in victim services where they work for the prosecutor's office, they'll say brave. Even when others feel differently, I speak up for what's right for the victim. Or fairness. I deal with everyone the same. So those strengths, whether you choose careful, brave, fairness, there are so many strengths. Whatever you choose, that strength is your secret power. It's a superpower. So now we can move on to the B. That's the third element of self-care, and it focuses on boundaries. Legal, physical, intellectual, emotional, sexual, time, material. Oh, there's so many boundaries. But as Jesse Norman said, problems arise in that one has to find a balance between what people need from you and what you need for yourself. So if we were looking at a strength for boundaries and how you could put it to practice, one that keeps coming up in my keynotes and trainings, determined. I know how to say no when I have to. Men and women who know how to do that, that is an amazing way to put the limits up. Self-control, I stay away from certain people. Prudence, I know my organizational policy. These are strengths that are superpowers. These are your secret superpowers. A lot of people, they've thrown out so many strengths through my trainings. Punctual, mature, spiritual, vitality, fairness, relaxed. When you think about your strengths, you might say, I'm patient, or I'm tactful, or honest, or sociable. What are others? Firm, playful, hopeful, happy, creative, integrity, being organized. Focus on these strengths and you're going to build your resilience. So now let's aim on the fourth element, which is understanding job satisfaction. And that element focuses on the feeling of pleasure and achievement that you experience in your work or in your personal life when you know that what you're doing is worth doing, and it gives you a really good feeling. But at work, you have to have a fit between your job description, which is your responsibilities, your needs, like the working condition, you're paid well, and accomplishing your goals, whatever those goals may be. And especially when you're working with patients or clients, you want to make a difference. And it has to be the appropriate workplace and the right industries. You have to have the strengths for the job. You need a supervisor who shows appreciation. Trusted leaders are very important. I do a lot of trainings for leadership because it has to trickle down to supervisors and staff. You need to be paid as much as your peers, accomplishing your goals, and your work makes a difference. And I love the saying by Rachel Naomi Remen. She said, wounding and healing are not opposites. They're part of the same thing. It is our wounds that enable us to be compassionate with the wounds of others. We understand that many of us go into this field. I wrote a course book for nurses on loss, grief, and bereavement through Western schools. And nurses, many of them go into the field because they were hurt in some way as a child or as an adolescent. Look, for me, for instance, I went into the field of thanatology because of my father's suicide. We all have wounds, and we have to recognize that when we work with others, we don't want to open up our own wounds. We just have to acknowledge that they're still there. So looking at understanding job satisfaction, we choose a strength and put it into practice. 2 keep coming up. Love of learning. I understand what I can change in my workplace, what I can't change, and ways to make the difference, and ways to make the best of it. And also skillful. I know how to communicate with others. Your strength is your secret superpower.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So before we have 4 more LOUS, I think, left.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case we don't finish today.
We probably won't.
And we probably won't. Is there another place that our listeners can find these super strengths on your website, for example?
Yes, my website is griefworkcenter.com, GriefWorkCenter.com, or BarbaraRubel.com, and that's spelled Rubel. However, also I have a lot of videos, and I've been on a lot of webinars. They could just go to, I guess, YouTube and look me up and listen to other podcasts and webinars as well.
Yeah,
so
that's
I welcome.
I want to make sure that the listeners don't miss out on things you have to say. So we've got LOUS, and what am I talking here? Hold on.
Yeah, you're right.
We're talking about laughter, optimism.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And because we probably won't finish, and I never do, people are like, oh, I want to know the rest of it. And then they go online, and then they move from my webinars and podcasts or books to wanting to read more about strengths and resiliency. So my goal is not to just stop here today, but to give them that little push to learn more and to get healthy and to gain the strength that they need.
Well, we've got a couple more minutes to go, and I want to make sure that it's packed with all of your talent. So,
thank you. Well, all right, well then let's get into laughter.
That's a good one.
It's a great one. I love that one. This element emphasizes how you make time for fun in your life, and what way does your job fulfill you? It's about how you find joy. During my trainings, I give everyone a toy to play with, and we only play with the toy for 5 minutes. And then I'll say to them, when you go home, you see, we only played for 5 minutes. Can you just promise that you will go home and make 5 minutes of playtime? People will say, they'll shake their heads, I don't have 5 minutes. They don't even have 5 minutes for playtime. Even if when you get in your car at the end of the day, instead of driving home, sit there and have a drink, not an alcoholic drink, but have an iced tea or a lemonade, or have a drink, put on the channel for the comedy channel. Give yourself 5 minutes to just decompress. It's all it takes. So if you want, also in your personal life, try to surround yourself with people who make you smile. We always seek out people who are like us. So hopefully you choose people who smile around you. So if we look at a strength and putting into practice playfulness, use gallows humor with your coworkers, or zest, start each day with a sense of excitement, or kindness, help others, makes you feel good. Again, that strength is your superpower. So if we look at optimism, which is the 6th element, that significantly influences your physical well-being. Mental attitude, it influences your physical and mental health, how you cope with life. Optimism is a personality trait. It's a protective factor against burnout in the workplace. So optimists choose behaviors that increase longevity. So if that's the fact, and that's what the research says, it's going to help us live longer. So think about how you think about your own personal job. Do you think of it as an optimist, where it's rewarding, fulfilling, and gratifying? Or is it as a pessimist? Is it wounding, exhausting, and draining? So here, if you choose a strength, the ones that are mostly chosen that I hear, realistic. I treat the situation as temporary. I have high expectations that in the end, everything will be okay. That's a realistic strength. Or hopeful. I anticipate the best possible outcome. Or perseverance. I'm persistent to get things done in spite of interruptions. So then if we move to the 7th element, that's being united, being connected with others, having relationships. But we have to remember, some people are real, some people are good, some people are fake, and some people are real good at being fake. So it's important to take care of yourself and to be around people who build you up, because people are special and we need to be treated as such. So if we look at a strength, we could choose gratitude. And you could put it into practice by saying, I enjoy my friends and family, and especially my dog because he's my best friend. Or collaborative, I'm loyal to my team. Or love, my close relationships are important to me. And keep saying to yourself, my strength is my secret superpower. And lastly, I think we're getting to all of them. This is great. Self-compassion. It's the 8th element of self-care. And it's all about unconditional kindness to yourself. Don't be so judgmental. And as Kristen Neff says, look at yourself, with non-biased awareness as part of a larger experience. Other people, they make mistakes too. You're not alone in this. Be spiritual, remain positive. Don't become overworked by all the adversity that you see, because there's so much out there. So if we choose a strength, gentle comes up so often. I treat myself with kindness when things go wrong at work. Or spiritual, I make meaning out of my job. Or humility, if I lack a skill, I'm willing to be taught by someone who knows more than I do. That's it. What can you do with your secret power? Well, there's an Aikido principle. You can't control the unexpected, but you can control your responses to it. So you take your secret power, you take your strength, you put it into practice, and then you do something. Self-care, yoga, exercise, gardening, take walks, pray, read, whatever it is. Because resilient professionals are open-minded, they have a positive attitude, a great sense of humor, they're optimistic, they're hopeful, they keep their boundaries, they know how to extend self-compassion to themselves when they're distressed, they're connected with others, and they understand why they are satisfied with the job. They are fabulous, and that's my principle.
There we go. Fabulous. It's a wonderful principle, and I'm grateful that you were able to put it together in the format that you have. It certainly makes life easy, and it certainly makes it easy for the listeners. I always tell my listeners, you've listened to this podcast once, listen to it again, because I know you've missed things. You have to, because there's so much content here. And I don't want you to miss anything that Barbara Rubel has to say. You can go to her website at barbararubel.com or griefworkcenter.com. Either way, you'll get to her. You can search her YouTube videos on youtube.com. And Barbara, if there's one thing you would tell people to do right now about being resilient in their life, what would you say? What would you advise them?
I would say slow down. Slow down. Everyone tells me, because I'm a trainer, I walk around to the tables and I listen to everyone. Everyone is in such a hurry. They have so much on their plate. They're spinning so many plates.
Right.
So I would say, look at your metaphor for life. How do you describe your life? And how can you change your metaphor so you have a more peaceful life? Make time for you.
Make time for you. And slowing down is a big one, people, today and every day. I want to thank Barbara Rubel for being here today. She has given some extremely significant content to work with. And whether you are involved or part of a family of suicide, death, or just stress on the job, what Barbara has to say is important. It helps you to build your personal resistance. And you can go to my website at askjoannevictoria.com and get a free download of the True Self Handbook, a guide to transform your life. It'll make you work a little bit, but you'll be happy when you're done. I thank everybody for being here today. It's been a wonderful podcast interview with Barbara Rubel, and I'm grateful that she is here. Have a great time, everybody. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.